And he said to his secretary, what should I bill him? Only did it for 2 hours. Should I bill him $200? So he said to the guy, bill him for $5,000. And the guy called and raised hell. Raised hell with Waller. He said, $5,000? What are you talking about? 2 hours? What's the matter with you, Waller? Oh, he said, my secretary added a zero to it. She made a mistake. Oh, the fellow said 500. That's different. They sent him a check for 500. So, Waller was always thinking when it came to money.
He reminded you of one of the best out of the old Tammany. He quietly was determined to get what he wanted, and he worked very hard at it.
Unlike most other owners in the game, baseball was O'Malley's primary source of income. And while he had one of the sport's most profitable franchises, by the mid-50s, he had reason for concern. Since the early Jackie Robinson years, when capacity crowds routinely filled Ebbets Field, attendance had been steadily declining. In fact, attendance was down everywhere in baseball, except 1,000 miles west in Milwaukee, where the Boston Braves had just moved in 1953, and where fans were filling seats at record rates.
They were a runaway success. O'Malley was driven by the fact that he had to keep up with the Braves. How many times do you find these big corporate guys who aren't intrigued by profit? When they see that money out there, the sockets roll in their eyes.
Seeing Milwaukee's County Stadium, with its spacious layout and ample parking, only confirmed what Walter O'Malley already knew: that Ebbets Field, crammed into one city block, with just 700 parking spaces, was becoming obsolete.
When he became president of the Dodgers in 1950, the first thing he said was, I want to solve and address the aging of Ebbets Field with a new stadium in Brooklyn.
The dressing rooms were horrible.
Concrete was decayed and the seats were all broken. The fire department was concerned about the safety.
And God, did it stink. There is no capacity for Ebbets Field to feel modern. It is doomed and destined to feel old. And that's not what people want.
After spending their lives in cramped walk-ups and crowded subways, what people in post-war Brooklyn wanted was space and homes of their very own. And when Levittown opened on Long Island in the late 40s, they began to get it. Less than 30 miles from Ebbets Field, it was a whole nother world.
Suburbs, suburbs. When you went to Long Island, you were going to the country.
You know, the good earth. You finally have a piece of land in your own home, and that was the dream of a lot of our parents. And it was sort of the definition of making it.
In the newspaper in the 50s, I remember seeing houses for sale, and the advertisement beckoned people, leave the city on the new superhighway out to Long Island. And hey, people started to leave.
By 1954, as more and more fans left, attendance at Ebbets Field had sunk to a new low. And there was one man with no connection to baseball who Walter O'Malley partially could thank for his mounting troubles. His name was Robert Moses.
It has often been perceived that Robert Moses picked up working class and middle class white New York and commanded them to get to the suburbs, and that's not true. Robert Moses simply was the man who made it possible. You couldn't get there unless there was a highway, and he built the highways, and you couldn't get out of the city unless there was a bridge, and he built the bridges.
As the head of 12 New York City agencies, including all in the fields of public works and construction, Robert Moses could build whatever he wanted. To Moses, the car was king, so he built 627 miles of roads in and around the city. But that only begins to explain his influence on Gotham's landscape. Robert Moses saw New York as his canvas, and he spared no inch in building his masterpiece.
He had more power than any mayor, or more power than any governor, and more power than any mayor and governor combined. If you went into any of his offices, behind him would be this immense map. It wouldn't just be New York City. It would be Westchester, Long Island. He saw it all as a single vision. He conceived this vision in 1924, and he spent the next 44 years filling it in.
In altering New York City's landscape, Robert Moses changed the face of Brooklyn. Those mostly white residents who were moving out to the suburbs were being replaced by Puerto Rican immigrants and poorer blacks from the South. In the Dodgers, who fielded 6 black players, among them one Latino, Cuban Sandy Amoros, those new minority residents found a model of integration and a winning team to cheer for. But in those new residents, Walter O'Malley only found more reasons for concern.
He called me into his office one day and said, look out the window. I said, what do you see? We see about 600-700 people lined up across the street. He said, that's the unemployment office. He said, look at them. They're blacks and they're Puerto Ricans. They don't pay their way. They don't come to the ballpark. Why are we catering to these people? Don't get me wrong, the Waller wasn't a racist. If you were a minority that could afford the $5 or $10, fine, he was all for it. But if you couldn't come to the ball game, he wasn't a fan of yours. Waller was all business.
He went to the ballpark one day, and a Puerto Rican fan urinated in a beer bottle and threw it out on the field. And O'Malley said to me, what the hell am I doing here? These weren't the old lovable Brooklyn fans, you see.
The world was changing, and Walter O'Malley, with a deficient ballpark and a displaced fan base, was determined to adjust.
Going from Long Island into Brooklyn, it was a schlep. So when you went to a game, it was not cost prohibitive, it was travel prohibitive.
They're not going to come in on a streetcar anymore. They're not going to walk. They need to drive. There are 700 parking spots at Ebbets Field, and that is not enough. He's no fool. He knows that those people will still come to Dodgers games. He just has to find a way to make it easy for them to come back into Brooklyn to see them.
Which is exactly what the O'Malley did. Having spent years surveying Brooklyn for potential stadium sites, he had finally found the perfect one. A soon-to-be-abandoned meat market on the corner of 2 major roadways, Flatbush and Atlantic Avenues. It was Brooklyn's version of Times Square, complete with room for more seats, space for more parking, and access to all the city's subways.
And here's the beauty part. It is the terminus for the Long Island Railroad. The Long Island Railroad is bringing into Brooklyn all those many Dodger fans who had left for the suburbs. They can get on the train in their towns, get off, walk upstairs, and there is a ballpark. It's perfect. It's beyond perfect. It's ideal.
And Walter O'Malley, the erstwhile engineer, wasn't planning to build just any old stadium. He was thinking much bigger.
He showed me in his office a dome stadium model, and he told me, this is the future, Carl.
He wanted to build the finest baseball stadium known at that time. He wanted it privately financed. He wanted to maintain it. He wanted to pay taxes on it.
He wanted a modern stadium, and what could be newer than a geodesic dome rising up on the corner of Flatbush and Atlantic Avenue? He was really going to give the people of Brooklyn something remarkable.
New stadium talk, parking, mass transit, none of that stuff really concerned Dodger fans. What mattered to them was winning the World Series.
They gotta win. They gotta!
It was bad enough losing to the Yankees so often. But in 1954, it got worse, when the hated Giants were crowned champs. New York teams had won the past 6 titles, and heading into the '55 season, the boys of summer were running out of chances to get in on the action.
Pee Wee Reese came into my office one day and said, this looks like it's going to be it. I said, why, Pee Wee? He said, well, I've got maybe 2 more years, 1 more, maybe. Gil Hodges is no longer the player he was. Even Duke is showing some signs of age. If we don't do it this year, we're not going to do it.
Murillo opened with a hit off Martin's glove.
Playing like a team on a mission, the Dodgers won their first 10 games and 22 of their first 24. They ran away with the pennant, finishing 13.5 games in front of the National League pack.
What are you going to play on the series, Campy? Well, the way they're going in the American League now, I doubt if anyone knows that. But I would prefer to play the Yankees or Cleveland, and I would love to beat the Yankees.
Campanella would get his chance. But the rest of Brooklyn was hardly as optimistic about another meeting with the Bronx Bombers.
Anybody who plays the Yankees and is confident is sick. We knew we were good, but they were the Yankees. And here we go again.
It was the Dodgers and the Yankees for the third time in 4 years, and everyone in Brooklyn was bracing for the worst. And after the Dodgers lost the first 2 games in Yankee Stadium, that's exactly what they were getting.
I could never imagine my Dodgers being swept, but you dared to worry about it.
Well, we're going back to Brooklyn. You know, let's hope we win 2 out of 3, send it back over there. But how are we going to win back over there? Inside ourselves, we thought it was over.
A grounder to Gilliam, and the Dodgers win 5-3.
But the Dodgers won all 3 games at Ebbets Field, only to return to Yankee Stadium and lose Game 6.
And the series is all square once more.
It was down to one deciding contest, a hand the Dodgers had been dealt before. This time, though, they had a wild card up their sleeve.
If I wanted to win 1 game, Johnny Padres was the man I wanted.
From a small mining town in upstate New York, Johnny Padres was young, brash, and most importantly, unburdened by the Dodgers' history of futility. In fact, he was unburdened by just about everything.
When Johnny woke up in the morning, all he thought about was having a good time.
John would say, Roomie, what time are you going to the room tonight? I'd say, I don't know, why? He says, maybe I want to use the room. I said,